Hey boys and girls, hopefully this is working okay. This is just a quick one off the cuff because I got asked a good question, and I thought that rather than trying to type it out, I would try and answer it via video. But the quickest and easiest way for me to do that at the moment is to just do a Google Hangout and upload it straight to my YouTube. We'll do another one of these next week where we can interact and I'll take questions. If you catch me for the 5 minutes I'm on now, feel free to ask a question. So this question came from a lady whose initials are AC, and she wrote this in the comment section under a Skype to phone video interview I did with Layla Lorick of Narcissistic Abuse Victim Syndrome. The interview is excellent, of course, but the sound is not great. And we were talking about what the effects of narcissistic abuse are, what the aftermath of narcissistic abuse can be. This lady, AC, asked the question. It took a long time to break my denial that my partner, well done me, that my partner would not allow me to be happy, confident, or independent outside of his influence. So there's a point that I made in this interview. I'm still really smug about this because I made it off the cuff, and then afterwards I heard it and I was like, that was quite clever. Which is that if you're in a relationship with somebody who truly is cluster B, they truly are a narcissist. You know, you're not just misdiagnosing them because you're angry at them and just like, you're a narcissist, man. And they genuinely are. They actually do have a cluster B personality disorder. Then whatever it is that you're feeling at any moment in time is most likely because that's what they want you to feel. And if they don't want you to feel something, then they'll crush it. So anything, usually, because of the cluster B is on a spectrum, the more classically what we would term borderline side of the personality, we'll see if they're the malignant borderline narcissist, any sort of sign of happiness or growth or change or health is a movement away from them, and they will punish you for trying to get away from them. They're very easily provoked. They're very insecure, deeply vulnerable, in fact. So if you seem to be happy or confident or moving forward, they'll try and crush that. I made the point, if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, if you feel something, it's probably what they want you to feel. If you feel confused, depressed, abandoned, insecure, jealous, whatever it is you're feeling, that's probably a fostered emotion that they have provoked inside of you. This lady continues. It took a long time to break my denial that my partner would not allow me to be happy, confident, or independent outside of his influence. If it's within his influence and if it's on his terms, then fine. Same with my ex, who was cluster B. If it was on her influence and on her terms, then yeah, I could be happy, confident, and independent. But only in a context in which she could cut that off at any moment. They're control freaks at the end of the day. When a situation would arise, she goes on, where these positive emotions were facilitated without him, he'd become very moody or critical. They will panic if these moods, the emotions that you're expressing, because they're all about emotion. The narc glasses, when you put them on, you're looking at a topography, you're looking at a landscape that is only really picking up emotional reactions and looking for where the power lies. And the power really lies in people's emotional responses. So that's what those narc glasses show you when you put them on. Like in the film They Live, where they put on the glasses and they see the truth of the advertising slogans that are around them. And they can see who's an alien and who isn't. He'd become very moody or critical. So their way of punishing is by emotional dysregulation. The way of showing you to stay within your boundaries, to stay in your lane, is to become critical and punishing through mood swinging when you drift off. So you learn at not the conscious level, you learn emotionally at the unconscious level to not drift into certain areas and to not demonstrate certain emotional states. It's very cunning and insidious is probably the correct adjective to use, because it creeps in and it's really devastating. It has a very devastating effect on the target. This often escalates into more extreme behavior if I try to redirect or set a boundary. So the more you push back, the more the narcissistic personality type, the cluster B personality type, is going to fight to regain control of you and to put you back into your zombie-like state of slumber. So this is all stuff we covered before. You're probably thinking, yeah, I know all this. This is good. I know this stuff, though. Okay, it then goes on. It goes a little deeper. Okay. Also, the idea of loud silence spoke directly to me. So she puts the words loud silence in inverted commas. I didn't say loud silence, but loud silence is a good way of describing it. It's kind of like a weaponized silence, you could say. I would have called it more like conspicuous silence or a conspicuous abandonment, where what I said in the interview with Lady Lorick is that when they depart, they would ideally like to put a hook in your guts that is attached to them, such that as they're further away they walk, the more you're eviscerated, your guts are pulled out by them leaving. That's what would make them really, really happy. So the loud silence that AC describes, I didn't use that term. I was talking, but it's a good term. I was saying that there's a conspicuous vacuum. They do everything they can to create as much of a feeling of vacuum when they leave. So in the martial arts, we see this. Like if you want to throw an opponent by pulling them, like you're going to pull them over your hip for a hip throw, you push first. You don't start with a pull. You push, you push, you push, you get them used to being pushed, and they start pushing back. So if I push you, what you resist persists. So if I push you, it's just your natural human response is to fight for balance and to push back. So if I'm in your space, you'll push back the other way. If I then suddenly if I push you enough and then just fall back, you're going to fall forward. That's what they're doing. So it's a very conspicuous vacuum they leave behind, in which they hope that your eyeballs and guts will be popped out. Nice, huh? She goes on, the idea of loud silence spoke directly to me. So much time and energy was spent walking on eggshells or trying to find resources to help him with his combat CPTSD, buffering hostile responses to situations he didn't agree with, etc., that I find myself now in deafening silence and almost craving an adrenaline dump, i.e. contact with him, brackets, just to get a charge, to get energy, to take care of myself, / break the listlessness. Is this common or normal? So that's a long sentence and it has a lot in it. So let's just break this down. Let's start the sentence again. So much time and energy was spent walking on eggshells or trying to find resources to help him with his combat CPTSD. So I just mentioned the conspicuous vacuum, the conspicuous silence that comes in. I think it's Sam Vaknin who I first heard use the term conspicuous vulnerability. So when you, like all of this cluster B stuff as defined by the DSM, I find that the DSM definitions a useful model to work from. But as I'm learning more and studying more and having more experience, I realize that it's not really that simple, and that probably most of this stuff should be understood to be a little bit fluid, often comorbid, meaning they're often showing up at the same time, they're often overlapping, and they all occur on a spectrum. So all your cluster B personality disorders, which you can go and Google now if you want, will all overlap. So it's going to be normal for you to have a narcissist who's a bit histrionic, who's a little bit overly obsessed with sex. It's going to be normal for you to experience being with a psychopath who is also something of a borderline personality disorder. So they're all occurring usually at the same time. I haven't had a story described to me by anybody ever where I've just said, okay, based on my understanding of the criteria in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, that is a pure narcissist, or that is a this, or that is a that. Within the definition of narcissism, we have subsets. We have the idea of a fragile narcissist, a vulnerable narcissist, an overt narcissist, a cerebral, somatic, and all the rest of it. And it does get quite complicated. Here, what I'm hearing, though, is that you really have somebody, so let me repeat the sentence. So much time and energy was spent walking on eggshells or trying to find resources to help him with his combat CPTSD. It is not uncommon. Now, this is where it gets complicated, and I'm going to make 2 points that overlap and contradict each other, which is fun. It's not uncommon when you're dealing with somebody who you would call a fragile narcissist, a vulnerable narcissist, or a borderline, who we're finding in the research nowadays are overlapping significantly. Sorry, I just have to take some ringing out of my head. Is that they will have a thing that they really need help with, a wound that will not heal, that you're there to help them with, because you are playing the role of the codependent. You're the good and faithful carer, the hospital nurse, the good doctor, whatever it is. You're playing a game, you're playing a role. So her job in this game is, as she puts it, trying to find resources to help him with his issue, his combat CPTSD. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't have combat CPTSD, because I'm going to make a second point now that overlaps and possibly contradicts the first. He may genuinely have combat CPTSD. He may genuinely, I'm saying, she said combat CPTSD, and I'm not correcting it. And people who know about this stuff be going, why isn't he correcting combat CPTSD? If he's a combat veteran, then that's PTSD. So further, a little bit, let's gouge a little further into the rabbit hole. More recent research that I've done indicates to me that there can't really be such a thing as PTSD without CPTSD. So name it. I watched a TED talk the other day by a young guy back from several tours in Afghanistan, and his last tour was removing improvised explosive devices from the side of the road. It's a good TED talk. And he describes how he can't drive down the sides of the road anymore, even in wherever he's from, Idaho or Ohio, some like farming place in the middle of America, where he's not at risk of being blown up by the Taliban at any moment. He's just driving down the road, but he can't drive down the sides of the road anymore because his neural network is screaming at him, don't drive near the curb. That's where the bombs are. The limbic system is screaming, and his frontal lobes are not powerful enough to tell the limbic system to shut the fuck up. So that's why I'm not correcting it. He will then have complex post-traumatic stress as well. Of course, the post-traumatic stress is the incident, the IEDs. But what if none of them ever actually blew up? So you can't say, oh, he's freaked out because on August 16th, 2010, his buddy lost his legs from an IED, whereas he survived, and and that's the one incident. It wasn't one incident. He was trapped in his tour of duty, in his role, in his job, having to do the same thing. So he's isolated, trapped. Yes, he's got other men with him, but however many guys were in that truck, they were isolated. It's down to them to do it. Do you know what I'm saying? And they're forced to play Russian roulette every day. I remember the scene in The Deer Hunter where they're all forced to play Russian roulette. Pretty stressful. Imagine doing that every day. And the threat is not vague. It's real. It's here and now. You have every reason to believe that you're in grave danger. It's an extremely dangerous job. That will create complex post-traumatic stress disorder as well as PTSD, because he's going to have emotional flashbacks to what? Come on, boys and girls. I've trained you well in this now. We all know the answers. What were the recurrent emotions that he experienced that he couldn't run away from in that scenario where he woke up every day and drove down a road looking for improvised explosive devices that were designed to kill him and his friends? Well, he would feel helpless. He would feel anxious. He would at times feel terrified. He would at other times feel mind-numbingly bored and lonely. Name it. All these different things are firing off in his head. So I'm not correcting combat CPTSD. It's combat PTSD, and it has CPTSD in it. The reason why the suicide rate amongst veterans is so appallingly high is probably because they're not being addressed for CPTSD as well as PTSD. And the reason why they're not recovering as well as they should be is because the CPTSD is overlapping with the PTSD. And it's, as we here know, for people who've been following on this channel, we've probably got good tools that combat veterans could use. So, still with me? If he does have combat CPTSD, what are the chances that that alone has made him sick enough that he could become an emotional abuser? Well, some of the research that I've looked at suggests very high. What they did was let me get this right, they correlated the incidence of veterans who had been diagnosed with full-blown chronic persistent PTSD, and then they tested those veterans for significant traits of borderline personality disorder, which is a subset of narcissism. And the research that I looked at said 80% had developed significant borderline traits. So can it drive people to the point where they become emotionally abusive? The research that I initially looked at said yes. 2 months later, for whatever reason, I'm researching more about PTSD, just straight up normal post-traumatic stress disorder. And one of the things that comes up is the effect that combat PTSD that has come about through, either frontline combat, exposure to genocide, exposure to, like mass executions, really horrendous experiences. What I came across was the effect that has on spouses. The effect it has on the spouse and the family is everybody in the family unit gets sick. When the combat veteran has chronic PTSD, everybody in the family unit usually manifests a degree of sickness. The spouse will go into a spiral of emotional dysregulation. They will develop their own emotional flashback type symptoms. I'm putting the word emotional flashback in there. The literature I read didn't say emotional flashback, but anxiety, depression, self-abandonment, more use of drugs, more use of alcohol, more smoking, more gambling, more porn, more whatever it takes to stop the stress that they can't escape. And then further, the longer it goes on, you see more incidents of nervous breakdowns, of bouts of rage. So the rage that the PTSD veteran is experiencing kind of gets transferred by proxy into the people nearest to him. The abandonment, the depression, and the anxiety they experience transfers into them. And then suicide, you start to see high rates of suicide. That's in the spouses. So imagine what the suicide rates of the people who have the actual problem. So we're going further. It gets deeper. In our culture, in the West, I'm a Brit. I speak to a lot of Americans, Canadians on this channel, Brits and Australians, and the English-speaking world mainly. But we have followers all over the place. In the Western world, we play the game of black and white thinking. And because of the films we've been watching since we were kids, we play the game of the split between the victim and the abuser. And the problem with that, as I've tried to mention on this channel before, and it did not go over very well, is that it's easier and more comforting to think of the world in black and white. I was the victim of narcissistic abuse. Therefore, because I am the victim, I am whiter than white. I had no part. I'm absolutely good. I had no part in the process. I never did anything wrong. And being the victim puts you in the position of never having done anything wrong. In the case of the combat veterans, and this is something that the channel will be moving towards either later this year or perhaps at the beginning of 2016, is they are the victims. Yes, they are the victims of huge amounts of stress. Without wanting to go into conspiracy land or turn this political, a fairly major ripoff, a fairly major con is levied against combat veterans. And that heartache, I think, is the big elephant in the room, is the big no, is the big taboo that nobody's supposed to talk about, that if they don't talk about, they won't get better. Because you have to be able to call abuse abuse. The truth will set you free. You've got to look at the reality of the situation in order to get better, right? So these combat veterans could come back, and due to the experiences that they've had in the military, in their tours of duty, could become emotionally abusive, de facto emotionally abusive. That's without getting into other evidence I've seen from elsewhere, where the military in young, lost people can foster narcissistic traits if they do well in the military. I've seen that firsthand on more than one occasion. Let's drop that subject. We'll leave it for another day. I'm not saying all combat veterans are emotionally abusive. I'm not saying that everybody who goes into the military is a narcissist, far from it. What I'm saying is that I can't address this question without sort of saying, well, this person is a combat vet. Their PTSD might be the cause of the emotionally abusive patterns of behavior. We're going to go even deeper now. There are emotionally abusive personality traits, and then there are emotionally abusive patterns of behavior. There are let's say it like this. There are narcissistic traits, and then there is narcissistic patterns of behavior. A person could demonstrate one day narcissistic patterns of behavior, and then but not have significant narcissistic personality traits, meaning they're not doomed, they're not condemned. There is something that is not particularly well known, nor is it very well researched, but you can Google it. It's called context-specific narcissism. The simplest thing would be to observe the effect on the personality of a young, suddenly rising pop star. What's the effect going to be on the ego, on the personality of some 18-year-old kid who becomes a millionaire inside of a year and becomes world famous? If you look around at celebrities, generally the effect on their ego, on their personality is not positive because it's too much. The human being, the human mind isn't designed to withstand that kind of pressure, that kind of change in pressure. You get like the flat fish on the bottom of the ocean, and they're nice and flat, and they're used to that pressure. And then you try and drag them up to the surface, but you go too fast, they burst open, they break. They're not designed for that. So I'm not saying, AC, to answer this lady's question, in this specific context, that your partner isn't just plain old cluster B. What I'm saying is that the combat PTSD that he has might have induced this, but then again, you might have known him from before and it might have nothing to do with it whatsoever. This is new to me, so I'm just putting it out there. You're saying that you're looking to help him with his combat CPTSD. So this is the other thing that we try and do. We not only do we split abuser and victim and then make the victim whiter than white and the abuser is just completely evil and just that's dangerous because it's not the reality. It can't be. The reality is annoyingly sometimes going to be more gray than that. It's going to be more vague than that. There is going to be consent. There's going to be compliance. That's the very nature of codependency. Oh, this is as an aside. Somebody asked me the other day about codependence. Don't forget that the narcissist is a codependent. All cluster Bs are codependents. So it's not, how should I put it? It's not Little Red Riding Hood and the big bad wolf. She's the codependent. He's the mean narcissist. They're both codependents. One is manifesting that codependency in a dominating, predatory, quite nasty way. The other one's demonstrating that codependency in an excessively submissive, self-abandoning way. But they're both codependents. So I'm not saying you need to stick this out because he genuinely might be the victim of something bigger than him, or because it might be curable. Hey, it could be curable, but you might not be the one to cure it. It could be curable, but his cure really has nothing to do with you. That's tough. That's tough to hear. That's tough for a codependent to hear. But he is an adult, sovereign human being. You are an adult, sovereign human being. He was around for a long time before he met you. You were on this earth for a long time before you met him. And you're not part of one another. That is an illusion. It's a compelling illusion. People invest a lot emotionally into that illusion, but it's a sick one. It's a delusional illusion. Maybe it might be useful for you, AC, to just start repeating the mantra inside of your head. No matter how much I want to help this guy, I cannot. It is not within my power to, nor is it my job to. It's not my job to help this guy. It's not within my power to help this guy. He helps him. You help you. So whether it's combat PTSD or he was sick before he went into the military, he might have been attracted to the military because he was a cluster B before all of this happened. It doesn't really matter. So the other illusion that I was going to say that we have in Western culture that is fostered by films and the TV shows we watch is that you got to get down to the reality. There's a surface level and there's a reality. And when you get down to the reality, the core, let the mask slip, get to the core. It doesn't work like that. There isn't really a mask and then a core. It's much more multi-layered than that. And it's not as simple in the beautiful Hollywood narrative. They've probably made films like this. I just can't think of any of them right now. Maybe like Beauty and the Beast, I guess. He's really cranky, he's really grumpy, but it's because he's frightened that you'll leave him, and that if you can just crack that spiky outer shell, inside is a gooey, loving, soft, warm man. Maybe not. Maybe inside is just endless spikes, for all I know, for all you know, for all anybody that isn't him knows. So you don't, and I kind of like more speaking to the ladies here. I've done that. I played that game. I was Prince Charming. I was a little white knight on his horse, you know, trying to rescue a damsel in distress who really wasn't in distress. But I see this in women a lot more, where they're very attracted. They're almost vulnerable to the idea of the wounded soldier, you know, the guy who he's got something wrong with him, but he kind of needs cleaning up, and then he'll be okay. You know, he's a bad boy to everybody else, but he's going to be good for me. That's some dangerous shit right there, yo. That's poison. That's not good. So you be careful with that. You know, you're not going to not handle it because it's too tempting, but just handle that particular delusional narrative with a lot of care. Okay, so moving on from this, that's just the first part of one sentence. Wow. So I was buffering hostile responses to situations he didn't agree with, that I find myself now in deafening silence and almost craving an adrenal dump, i.e. contact with him, just to get a charge, to get energy to take care of myself and break the listlessness. Is this common or normal? So, AC, you're a grown woman. I'm not going to patronize you. It's common, but common ain't normal. Like, if you want to say normal as in healthy or neurotypical, no, it's not. It's not healthy or neurotypical. It's common amongst the victims of emotional abuse. You're in an emotionally abusive relationship that has you so beat down and so depressed and so full of self-abandonment and listlessness. And it sounds like you're not even sad. It sounds like you're numb, that you crave the drama of painful contact with this man, just so you can break your own listlessness, so that you can get on with your life and use your words, take care of yourself. So you need to have a screaming match with him, or some reaction-seeking, childish text message battle with him, just so you can brush your teeth, to take it to a silly metaphor, to a silly example. Yeah, that's not healthy. That's really not good. I can say that without a shadow of a doubt, and I don't think anybody would disagree with me. This is a very, very unhealthy relationship, and it's draining you. The deafening silence that you're experiencing is what he wants you to experience. He can only afford, let me say this right, to be cocky enough to give you a silence that is so deafening that it makes you think he's completely forgotten about you, if he is certain, sure in his heart of hearts, and confident that the hook is still in you, that he still has that spiky collar around your neck, where the spikes face inward, like in that movie with Vincent D'Onofrio and Jennifer Lopez, where she goes inside the psychopath's mind. It wasn't a good film. It's good special effects, though. Somebody's going to tell me what. The Cell, right? The Cell. The psychopath gets hold of Jennifer Lopez, who's like a forensic psychotherapist, I think. She goes into this virtual reality simulator to hunt the psycho killer, the psychopathic serial killer, in his domain, in his fractured mind. It's a pretty cool concept. It just wasn't a good film. And when she finds him, he captures her and turns her. He turns her into one of his own like little demonic minions, and he makes her wear a collar with the spikes are facing inward on the inside of the collar. It's pretty gross, but there you go. So that's what he's doing with you. He feels good now. Whether the combat PTSD has made him this way, or he's like this anyway, what I'm sure of is you writing this stuff here. It's only 24 hours ago you wrote it. He knows you're in distress. He knows you're in pain. You've made it clear. You've made it obvious, because you've been engaging. I'm not psychic. I just do this for a living. You've made it clear to him that you're a grown-up, adult, rational person, and you want to make things right. Ding! You're like a little Girl Scout right now. You want to make things right. Yes, sirree. And he goes, excellent, great. Now I don't have to worry, because he knows where you are, literally and figuratively. He knows where you are emotionally and psychologically. So he can just sit back. He's all full. He's like a leech that's full of blood. He's feeling good now. He feels confident and calm. So he can just sit back and know that you're in distress and that you're in pain, and he doesn't have to worry about it. So that can only go on for as long as he feels that way. When he feels empty and insecure, he won't play this game with you anymore. He won't give you the silent treatment. He's not going to hit you with what you call the loud silence. I don't know if you know, but in the military, before they do room entry, they throw something called a flashbang in. A flashbang is like a grenade, but there's no shrapnel to it. It's just a loud noise and then a bright white light. I've had to play with one of them before because I was trying to join the army when I was a kid. And what happens is you can't see and you go deaf temporarily, apart from all the noise of like gunfire and the muzzle flash. They throw this flashbang in. So he's effectively giving you like the opposite equivalent of flashbanging you, which is, and the purpose of a flashbang, if I'm going to run into a room, this is what I was taught. This is what the King's Regiment taught me when I was visiting them, is you chuck it into the room, and the idea is it goes bang, and then there's a loud flash, and then for a few seconds they can't hear and they can't see, and you run in and you kill everybody. So he's trying to get you into a freeze response. He's trying to get you to go, oh, so that you're frozen. The freeze response in terms of the trauma type for CPTSD would correlate for listlessness, depression, self-abandonment, not taking care of yourself, not brushing your teeth and putting your socks on. So as I started this by saying, whatever you feel, that's what he wants you to feel. If he wants you to feel abandoned and shocked, that's what you're feeling. And it sounds like that is indeed what you're feeling. Now, how are you going to reverse this cycle and stop this process? Only if he gets unsure about where you are physically and emotionally is he going to stop doing this. How do you do that? Well, you can't fake it. You can't, like, if you like, we wrote about this in the book, How to Take Revenge on a Narcissist. If you try and fake, oh, I've totes moved on now and I've got like a new social network and stuff, it's going to come across ridiculous, and it's going to have the opposite effect that you want, because they know you, and they know you because you dummy, have told them everything about you with absolute sincerity. And I'm just an open adult. I just want to be loved. Here it is. I lay my cards on the table. I believe if I tell you sincerely everything about me, you're going to reciprocate. I just called you a dummy. I was the same dummy. That's me too. Me and you, we're both dummies. We're all dummies here. Everybody listening to this, they're a big dummy. We play this game because we're desperate for love. We're used to being abandoned and ignored. You most likely by parents in childhood, and we're big dummies who think that if you turn up, that your sincerity and that your effort and that your upfrontedness is going to be directly proportional, if we create a graph, to how much they love you and how much they respect you. And with a normal person who's not a codependent, that would probably be somewhat true. The more you make yourself vulnerable and put yourself out there, you might have more intimacy if it's not done in a neurotic way. If it's done in a neurotic way, it's probably going to freak them out. But to a cluster B, it's the opposite. The more you give of yourself, the less they'll respect you and the more they'll use you. The more they'll just rub their hands with glee and play the big bad wolf and go, haha, great. Oh no, it's back. It says I'm live. Is that even true right now? I think we just lost the connection there. I'm sorry about that. Oh, you gave me questions and they've gone. Oh no, they've come back. Okay, I got your questions. I'll get to your questions. What I was saying is that the only way to make this work and to actually get out of the trap that you're currently in is to actually do the emotional work and to genuinely move on. When you genuinely do the emotional work, start processing your emotions, you go into that room where all the dead encyclopedia salesmen are who've been rotting for years, you start clearing it out, then you can start to move on. You can get back to a normal life. Well, not get back to, you'll never go back to where you were. I don't offer that. I can't offer you that service. I can't be like, oh, I'll just wipe your brain of this experience and you go back. There ain't no way out but through. You're halfway through the magic evil forest now, Dorothy. You got to keep going. And the only way out is to fight. So on the other side of this magical evil forest, the only solution I can offer you is that you're going to become a stronger, more sovereign, more boundaried human being with a better sense of self. So it kind of sucks in one way because I'm like, well, I have a way out, but it hurts and it takes time and it changes you as a person and it makes you stronger, which is pretty cool. So it's like it's a mixed bag. That's what I have on offer. When you do that, he will feel it. Now, he might feel it because of some Rupert Sheldrake theory of morphogenetic fields and how we're all connected, and it might be some semi-scientific explanation of somewhat psychic phenomena, which I've seen a lot of. We all have. There seems to be a psychic connection between people. It seems to be the case that when, you get with a new person and it's not announced anywhere on social media, it's a completely private thing, all your old crushes start popping up and saying, oh, I just was thinking about you and I thought I would send you a text. It seems to be like we're kind of a little bit psychically linked. The point here is, in order to reverse the situation, there is no way out but through. You must do the work. You must do the painful emotional processing thing, and you need to start to genuinely heal and genuinely move on. Then you can escape this trap that you're in, and I highly recommend that you do. AC, that was a good question. I hope that the advice I've given you has helped somewhat. If it hasn't, then I'm sorry that I wasted about 40 minutes of your time rambling on. I have some questions here by Mr. D Sharp. I'll just answer this one question, then I need to go and sleep. I look fucked. I have a loved one who's currently trying to work on their shit. From quite severe abuse in childhood. Carrots, really, and lentils. From quite severe abuse in childhood, but they can't stop beating themselves up physically and emotionally. How can I best help them, and how can I encourage them to accept compassion and care? You have a loved one. Mr. D Sharp, there is a lack of context to this question, and I wouldn't be helping you or myself or the people listening to this to just rush into an answer without saying, I need to know what your relationship is with that person more. I don't need to know fully. I don't need to know the ins and outs of it, but I don't know you, you see. Like, you know you, and you know where I'm coming from, but I don't know you. Why is it your job to help them to accept compassion and care? Who made that your job would be one of my questions. I'm not being mean. I'm trying to be kind but direct with you that it sounds like a trap, because you've asked how can basically you're asking, how can I, sovereign adult Richie, help you, sovereign adult D, help another sovereign adult clear up their emotional shit? The answer to that is I can't. There is no sentence structure I can give you that you can give them that's going to help them, engage in self-compassion and self-care. Nothing at all. Sorry about that. There's a follow-up question. I should add that when I've brought it up with them, they have said that they feel overwhelming guilt when they allow another to care for them as they feel undeserving. Yeah, there's nothing I can say to that other than, yes, I hear you. I accept that, what you have said. It sounds like things I've heard before. I don't ever do therapy or coaching or advice by proxy. So if the advice is not for you, I just don't do it. The reason why is I used to do it a lot, but I found that I would get caught in a strange sort of like double bind where I would start to give advice, and then the person I'm giving advice to going, oh, no, there's a part of the story you don't know. They couldn't possibly read a book called CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving because they hate books. They don't want to read it. Give me another solution. And I'll go, here's another solution. And I go, no, they don't like that. No, they won't. No, give me another one. And I'll give them, and then they go, no. And we just get stuck in this like, so slip them a copy of CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving, show them a Spartan Life Coach YouTube video. How do you, she's just another person. She's a person who's separate to you. So I don't know how often you see her. If you're around her a lot, one trick that you can do, I say trick, it's not really a trick, is be whatever you want to see in her, show it in yourself, and just be around her without pushing it on her and going, oh, you know, that's your agenda. You want her to feel differently. You want her to do differently. Maybe she or he should just be, just let them be around you and just listen to them. Just sit there and accept them as they are and go into a Zen-like space of acceptance and go, okay, you know, whatever they say, I hate myself and I want to die. So, okay, you hate yourself and you want to die. I don't deserve love because I feel so full of self-loathing and I feel guilty every time you care for me. And you just say, okay, you feel full of self-loathing. Okay, I'm here. And you're full of self-loathing and it's Tuesday and would you like a cup of tea? It's not your job to do that. It's a very difficult job to do anyway. The best coaches and therapists in the world struggle to do this. So don't make a rod for your own back, mate. Be kind. You sound like a kind person, a compassionate person. And the question you've asked me is honorable. I respect the intent. Let me help you by saying that you might be on a hiding to nothing. Last question before I need to sign off and get some sleep. Okay, the questions have gone in a funny order now. Treetail says, I've noticed a very narcissistic person that runs a YouTube channel and is starting to gain a following. I'm worried that this person is starting unwittingly, perhaps, an online cult. What is the best way to talk to this person's followers about what's up? Same thing I said to the last guy. It's not your job to stop people from getting into cults. So don't say anything. Just do something else. You can't. I use the Lord of the Rings a lot. I think I must really have liked that film. I think I like that story. I think I like that whole genre. You know, I thought it was cool. Magic and swords and dragons. I'm sure, you know, say Ian McKellen would say something like, you can't always fight evil by fighting it directly. Sometimes you just got to turn up the good. He would say something like that. He would say it in a cool way. He would say, you can't fight evil, or whatever, you know. I sound like Bane then. You got to be more good. It's like evil, like dumbness, dumb and evil, right? You can't stop dumb and evil. You can't. You'll die trying. You'll die before dumb and evil stops. You'll die 1,000,000 times over before dumb and evil stops. So you got to allow it. What you can't control it, but what you can do is you can turn up the light. You can set up your own YouTube channel that is the opposite of what they're doing. So if they're doing lack of objectivity, groupthink, emotional abuse, turn off your mind, just accept our mumbo jumbo, our narcissistic crapola, you do the opposite. You do, hey, let's turn up critical thinking. Let's turn up objectivity. Here's a YouTube video about how cool it is when you think for yourself and don't let others tell you what to do and be a sovereign, grown-up human being. Here's some psychology techniques or some philosophy tools that might help you to do that. That's what you should do, dude. Don't, you can't, like, why? Why do you want to crusade? You can't crusade against these people. They'll win. They'll always win. If you fight them directly, you've got to do it the other way. And they can't, that's a great tool. I use that all the time. Just do more good. Help more people. Go out more. Turn up the good karma. Turn up the good vibrations and make people happier. Bring more people out of suffering. They can't stop you. So we can't stop them doing what they're doing, but they can't stop us doing what we're doing. I don't get stopped. I just go out. Like loads of people want to attack me and call me names and swear at me. Blah, blah, blah. I just go, okay, I'll turn up the good. I'll just go and do something really, really cool. I'll go and make some free YouTube videos that help people. And what are they going to do? They just drift off. They're going to do something else. But you can't stop dumb and evil. It's not going anywhere. Treetail replies, I can't stand by and watch people destroy their lives. It's the humanity in me. It's a YouTube channel. They're not destroying lives. You're not watching. It's not like you're watching people being genocided and not doing anything. It's just a YouTube channel. Don't make it more than it is. You know, focus on yourself. Pay your bills. Wash your socks. Live a good life. Get some sunlight. It's all good. Okay, guys, that's it. It's time for me to go to bed. Thank you very much for your time and your attention and your patience. Sorry if I rambled. Sorry if I offended anybody. That was not my intent. My intent was to be helpful. If you did like it, then please press like, share it on your social media. It is good for everybody when this happens. Okay. Thanks again, and I will speak to you soon.